Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And in a win for common sense, it seems that schools could be at risk of legal action if they allow pupils to self-identify. Now, this will be a kick in the teeth for the gender bill in Scotland, but it apparently is the case that schools have no power to allow this. They must stick rigidly within the law. And so allowing children, school children and students to self-identify is a dangerous act. And it's one that they often do, but that's because the guidelines are unclear or plain wrong. And yet there are very, very serious legal repercussions if they go ahead and do this. So we'll take a look at this article, and it's something that's come along from Maya Forstater, someone we've backed on the channel before, someone who understands completely the issues involving gender and the law. She, of course, won her case against her employers because of her philosophical beliefs on the matter, and they tried to force her down one line. She said no. They tried to fire her. She sued them. She won. This is a woman who's standing up for the safety of women, and children in general and girls in particular, and so she's doing excellent work, and it's someone who the channel backs. But we'll have a look at the article, see what's going on, because it's setting, or at least the schools could be setting a very bad example, and they could end up being sued to smithereens. Here goes. So schools at legal risk if they let students self-identify as campaigners highlight faulty guidelines. And this is one of those things where there are rules written in stone, but because teachers don't want to be seen as being phobic because they're scared of this tiny loud but very tiny minority, then they kind of let these things slip, but they are actually breaking the law and they can be prosecuted for it. So campaigners have claimed that schools that encourage the use of preferred pronouns could be hit with legal challenges following new evidence that 80% of teachers report having gender non-conforming kids. 80%. So 4 out of 5 classes will have effectively will have someone who pretends that they're not a boy or pretends they're not a girl. And of course these teachers, rather than actually saying, no, actually you're not, will go along with this lie, this pretense. Teaching facilities could face legal challenges if they allow children to switch gender identity or describe themselves as non-binary. This is according to campaigners who blame faulty guidance from the Equality and Human Rights Commission that has failed to equip schools and colleges with the means to protect sex-based rights. They keep pushing gender-based, but it's not. It's sex-based rights are what they are in law. They're specified in law. The Scottish Express has already revealed that campaigners have warned schools to seek legal advice following controversial Scottish government guidance that impacts young people struggling with their gender identity. Nobody should struggle with their gender identity. They should look in the mirror, see, oh look, I've got a penis, I'm a boy. That's it. Now, if you've got a mental issue, that's different. Go and seek psychiatric help. But you cannot change anything physically. Now, Maya Forstater from gender critical lobby group Sex Matters is arguing that schools have a duty to recognise biological sex over gender identity for the protection of single sex spaces like loos and changing rooms. And if they don't, they could be at risk of breaching statutory duties. This follows a number of reports of widespread gender switches in schools and a YouGov poll that 80% of teachers reported their schools had students who identified as transgender or non-binary. Well, what you need to do with those children is ask them if they need to leave the school until they've found successful psychiatric treatment. Here's the thing. If you had someone who says the world is flat coming into into your office or into your workspace or wherever, would that then force you as an employer or as a colleague to then remove all globes and to remove any image of the world being round and to all have to pretend that the world is flat so that this one person wouldn't feel a bit awkward and silly? Of course not. Of course not. That wouldn't happen. So why are we doing the same with the obvious BS of all this gender shit. It's because the likes of Stonewall are very loud. They're very small, but they're very loud, and they try to frighten people in saying, oh, you're a phobe and an ist. No, we're not phobes and ist. We're just not mentally retarded. Miss Forstater, who won a landmark discrimination case after she was wrongly sacked in 2019 for making gender-critical comments, has been a vocal critic of gender policies that demote biological sex-based rights. Sex Matters argues that the school have a duty to recognise sex in a wide range of areas, including registration, data protection, toilet and changing facilities, and behaviour policies. And sex must always trump the perceived pretendiness of whatever gender you think you are. It must be biological sex first, regardless of whatever mental condition you appear to have. No pretendy Wendy's in the lady toilets. The report, which has been sent to Gillian Keegan, the Westminster Education Secretary, highlights that schools could potentially face legal action over allegations that they are breaching equality legislation. Now before we go into the sort of the 2010 Equality Act and things like that, there is actually legal protection for this in the schools bills, where schools must provide separate sex-based toilet facilities for children over 8 years of age. Now that doesn't mention gender, it's an older rule, and it says sex-based. And that is the law. And if they say, oh, we're going to have a gender-neutral toilet, they are in breach of that law. And the parents need to immediately sue the school. Sue the LEA. Sue everybody. Education, equality and safeguarding experts and lawyers have been consulted in an assessment of more than 20 statutes and regulations that affect schools, including the Education Act, the School Standards and Framework Act, the National Curriculum and Statutory Guidance on Safeguarding. Ms Forstater said that schools that get confused about the law and that don't have clear policies will be at risk of breaching their statutory duties, and at that point can be sued, as well as prosecuted. So they can be sued by parents for damages, and they can also be prosecuted by the Crown for breaching the actual law. The report's authors said there was no legal provision for schools to record or treat children as being the sex that they are not, and there is no obligation for single-sex schools to admit children of the opposite sex. School guidance telling teachers to use preferred pronouns, as in the case in Scotland, is inconsistent with statutory obligations, including the safeguarding requirements and human rights laws. In other words, by calling a boy a girl or a girl a boy, you're actually breaching the law. The report points to the Education Act 1996, which said schools and teachers may not promote or express partisan political views or personal beliefs in ways that exploit pupils' vulnerabilities. And that is the catch-all. And people who do, and all the teachers do, are guilty. It is noted that schools were obliged to respect pupils' philosophical beliefs, meaning that any ban on so-called misgendering was likely to breach anti-discrimination legislation. But the same rule applies to other people who don't fit that, who don't agree with it. And so you could say, yes, but miss, I want to be called a girl. Well, legally, you have the right to want to be called a girl. No one is stopping you wanting to be called a girl, and no one is stopping you from describing yourself as a girl. You have that right, your deeply held philosophical right. By the same law, I also have the deeply held philosophical right to call you a boy if you are physically a boy, because that is my deeply held philosophical belief. You can live within the rules, and so can I, but you cannot force me to call you something which you are quite clearly not, because of that, because of the 2010 Equalities Act. It's a wonderful piece of legislation. Alistair Coverley, an education law specialist barrister, said that children and young people were protected by the Equality Act 2010. Pupils are protected against discrimination on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, gender reassignment, religion, belief and disability. Now, gender reassignment. For that, they need to be reassigned. There is nothing there that says that you must call a boy a girl or a girl a boy simply because they want it. That's the difference. She said schools need to take effective steps to remove barriers to equality while protecting the welfare of all pupils. The Education Department, the Equality and Human Rights Commission were contacted for comment, yet to comment. But it is quite clear that going forward, philosophical belief, which is what they're claiming, must also be claimed by us who are not mentally ill. And we continue to call them by their sex and not by their supposed pretendy-wendiness. And I'm stopping there and I'm coming up. So good old Maya, fighting the good fight, continuing to push for sense, for common sense anyway, for reality, and to stop people forcing other people to lie and follow the delusional beliefs of the mentally ill. A boy is a boy, a girl is a girl, a man's a man, a woman's a woman. And it doesn't matter what goes on inside their head. Their bodies cannot change, no matter how hard they wish for it. Never mind. I'll stop there. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that this has earned a subscription. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and stay out of the ladies' toilets if you're a gentleman. Bye.